Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Shall we talk about knock tuning? Or let me be more specific, basic knock tuning. See, knock tuning takes on many forms as I've been discovering through my research of the world of YouTube and archery forums and this and that and anyway. I want to give you the basics. So, there's a lot of different types and styles of knocks out on the market, okay? Now, if you're an Easton Power Flight fan like I am, to a certain point at least anyways, you're going to always get this particular knock on those arrows, regardless of what their spine and weight is. Okay, this is just what comes on those Power Flights, okay? The unfortunate part is, it turns out, my archery guy at the archery place in Corbeil, more plugs for you, Andy, turns out he can't order just this specific style. Easton is only apparently supplying them on arrows that, you know how they're in the boxes in the store and there's like a bazillion arrows in the box and you just pick out the color fletchings you want, the spine you want, etc., right? Okay? And then you got to cut them down to the length you need, throw in your inserts, tips, and you're ready to go. Because they already got veins on them, they already got, this and that, right? Speaking of which, I have a arrow here that I got to redo the glue on. Interesting. We'll have to get to that. But anyway, so we can't order just these knocks, but I do have a collection of them because, well, in my journey through archery of setting up my spot hog, okay, which was a pain in the butt. Anyways, I broke a number of arrows. So, whoopsie. And yeah, that's just the way it goes. So I've collected a few of these for spares because I love them. They work perfect in my stinger bow here. They work perfect in my Matthews hammer bow, and just wonderful knocks for those arrows. And I've used these knocks on a few other types of arrows and they also work great. So it's kind of like, we should be able to get them though, please, somehow, somebody. All right, so then we got another style of knock, which, well, these little cheap chintzy pieces of garbage, they came on some traditional arrows, so arrows with feathers. And these are probably the worst knocks on the planet because they don't even work on my trad bow strings on any of my bows. So, yeah, so I pulled 3 out because, well, I changed them over to these Chinese knocks that come with these arrows, which are a 2-stage knock, and they hold really good and tight. And they work fine. Just make sure you always go to the second knock placement, which we'll talk about in a minute. But these are garbage. So there's different types of knocks. So if you're having some accuracy issues, look at your knocks first before anything. Okay, but also if you do have an arrow spinner, okay, you know the little machine I got, so you can see how much wobble is in your arrow, if any at all. You need one of those machines, but take the knock off, take off your tip, and then check your arrow. Then at least you'll know if your arrow is probably at fault. Your arrow may need to be knock tuned for the basics, but you may even have to change the weight. And a lot of these do weigh differently from each other, and a couple of grains is still a couple of grains either way. But the locking system is very important. Now, this one here is a very much the same kind of profile as these ones here, and it's a 2-stage. Also works rather well. And then in here someplace, I have this other one. Now, this is I believe this is an Easton, but it's a really different design, and I have ones that are even shorter and stranger looking than this from Easton. But these ones work pretty decently overall. It just depends upon the thickness of your serving, how knocks are going to work. If your serving is too thin and you notice that it slides up and down the serving arrow area, which you can easily check by just taking your arrow and just doing this, and then, you know, like that's not bad. I'm actually putting some effort into that, and that's not bad. It's not too tight, it's not too loose, right? Then we go to the first stage. Now that's about the same, but the problem with the 2-stage knock is if you only knock to the first position, there's not enough. So let me see if I can explain this. When you pull back at full draw and you release an arrow, a little action like kind of happens, and that needs to happen, all right, for the arrow to release, all right, and properly. And that could be a smooth nock that does that, like our Eastons and others, or it could be a double nock set like this. Well, this one here, when it comes forward, it pops straight forward and does a double out. Okay, so it's going to go bang bang, right, instead of just bang, right? So it's not going to be able to really do this sort of an action of any kind. I think that's how I'm trying to explain it. I don't know. I'm still learning a lot, so give me some space on this, all right? It's just, this is the things I notice of how things are reacting, okay? And the tightness is a big thing. If it's too tight, it's problematic. If it's too loose, it's problematic. It has to be just right fit to your serving string, to your serving area of your string. Otherwise, you have nothing but an issue. Now, with these particular arrows, these are 527 grain, 28.5-inch shaft to shaft cut. And these are the nocks that came with them. It's all original equipment here. And these ones here, like I said, they're a two-stage. So you're going to hear the first click and then a second. You got to put it in all the way, because if you don't, when it releases and it gets that vibration, which is, like I said, that kind of like a ching kind of action, if it doesn't release properly and it releases too soon, that's when things go hairy. And if it releases too late, things can go hairy. This is why your nock's very important to be proper. Otherwise, you're over there, up there, and in a bush, okay, somewhere. Or maybe into the dirt, who knows. But this is some stuff I learned about different nocks. Now, as far as basic nock tuning goes, which is the whole point of this video, but we need to explain certain things, that is when you are going to fire the arrow initially. Always have your odd feather either out or up, depends on the kind of rest you have. Okay, now with a whisker biscuit, it does not matter if your odd fletch is out or if it's up, you know. And if your bow is of the right vintage age, it could even be on the inside like this. It doesn't care. It's a whisker biscuit, but some rests actually do, okay? Anyways, so you're gonna put in the bow, you're gonna fire the arrow off, probably 5 or 6 times with the exact same arrow, see where it's landing. That's going to give you an idea if it's something with your sight or you. But always concentrate and focus. Get your sight bubble lined up as perfect as possible, blah, blah, blah. Eliminate all that, okay? And even if your arrow is running dead straight on a spinner, that doesn't mean there's a problem somewhere. There's always something, okay? So when you tune, you rotate a third of a turn, because you got three fletches, so 3 turns. If it's 4 fletch, 4 turns. Okay, so you turn a third. Now you can go small micro movements, so you can just, you know, start out with odd fletch out, maybe just change a couple of degrees. It does change the clock timing of release to spin start. Okay, I have no direct idea which direction it spins, but it's when that release fully happens and the arrow starts to spin, it changes the clock timing so that any offset that is there is going to hopefully be corrected. Now, if you found that it went worse, then maybe try turning the opposite direction the same amount, and just even little small turns at a time. Now, on a whisker biscuit, you can get away with this because a whisker biscuit doesn't matter. It doesn't care. Neither does a drop away rest matter or care. There's nothing, because by the time you've let that arrow loose, that drop away rest is already down and out of your way, so it makes no difference. Where the difference is made is on older bows where your cables are too close to the sides. Then if you're gonna run into the side of your cable, well, guess what? You're gonna have to go in the increment of, this is your odd fletch out, this is your new odd fletch out, and this is your new odd fletch out, and that's all you can do no matter what rest you have. Okay, but if you have a rest like a tri-brush system, I have one of those. Actually, I have one that's 3 brushes, and the other one that's 2 brushes in the bottom. You can only go in third increments, so you always have to have a fletch pointing up with those. Otherwise, yeah, it's all over the place and there is nothing you can do. And we learned about this ourselves the hard way, thanks to my buddy's bow, because he has the 3 brush system, and that's where we learned that that thing has to have a fletch upward at all times. So knock tuning in increments is not permissible, okay? But if it's a drop away or a whisker, definitely permissible as long as it's a full whisker biscuit like that. But that's your basic knock tuning for you. From there, you can change to different knocks, whether they're the same weight or different weights. A couple of grains is not going to make it or break it. You have at least a 35, maybe at most 40 grain tops amount of room you can screw with the weight, overall weight of an arrow before you're going to affect POI, okay? So point of impact. So that's going to be your elevation, okay? Your left and right, if you're changing the weight, should not be changed on the same spine of arrow. But if you change to a different spine, like a 340 we'll say, from a 4, then your windage is definitely going to be affected. Same as going from a 5 to a 4, your windage will be affected, but your elevation, depending on how much grain difference there is, may or may not be affected by the weight difference. Because every time you go down into a lower spine number for a stiffer spine, you also have a heavier arrow automatically. It's not optional, okay? And like I said, you only get that fudge room. And I did find that out by shooting 400s and 340s through my hammer bow. The only difference was I had to make a windage adjustment of 1 click in order to move the arrow back over to center, but otherwise everything else was fine. So that was not a big deal, which is kind of cool because now I have 2 options. So if I want an extra 27 grains of weight and a bit stiffer spine, that means not as much flop, which also means more accuracy, but it also means I need more poundage for a 340 over a 400. So that's where things get really stinky too. But the basics of knock tuning are just that. You start with the rotational trick. If that doesn't cut it for you, maybe check your fletch spacing to make sure it's all perfectly even. And if it's offset in any way, that could be another problem you have, is your fletchings weren't put on precisely correct. So you're going to have to correct that problem before you're going to be able to get that arrow to fly straight. Well, fly properly anyways. The other thing that can throw you out too, if everything else is perfect with your arrow, is your tip. Tips get bent. And trust me, I've slammed enough of them into my backstop to know that they can get bent. And it can throw an outage into the tip, which is always going to throw your accuracy off. Okay? So change your tip out. Check your spin on your machine with your tip on there. And if the tip is wonky, well, guess what? Your accuracy issue may not be you, may not be the rest of your equipment. It's your tip that's throwing the whole bloody arrow off, right? Because even I know this thing spins perfect on a dime, and this tip is still spinning good. Not all Chinese tips will spin this nice, but a lot of them do. But I could trade this out for a higher end tip that's made to much tighter specifics for machining quality purpose, and a stronger tip at that too. This is not hardened steel, so it's only going to take so many whacks and it starts to ding, and a ding in the tip is going to throw you out. Literally, it's that sensitive. And trust me, I've tried the differences because I've had a few they got dinged on the tips, so they're still going to stick, but they're not as pointy as they once were. And my accuracy of the arrow went down to the dumpers on that just because of the tip. So I changed out the tip, put a new tip on, ran it through, yep, running straight, good, out to the target we go, and bullseye, no problem. So a tip can do that kind of screwy thing. So you may not need to knock tune. Check your tips. This is why you need an arrow spinner, okay? It's gonna make a difference. Anyway, that's the basics for you on that part. As far as the rest of knock tuning goes, I am learning a lot, but I have no equipment, in other words, to show you about that, other than we have talked about some lighted knocks that I have before that, well, they're garbage, and you got to be very careful buying lighted knocks because they may or may not fit your serving. You may have to get your serving made thicker to accommodate them. That, or get a better quality name brand knock, and maybe that'll fix the problem with your slop, because a loose one of those knocks is definitely going to decrease your accuracy huge amounts, exponentially huge. So anyways, everything has to be right for a reason. And on that, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Comments below. See you on the next one.